excited to have you here for this big session, and we hope that you will join us for our other sessions during the rest of the month. And so without further ado, let me introduce our speaker today. So Kate Brodock is founding partner of the W Fund and CEO of Women 2.0, one of the largest global brands focused on gender and inclusion in startups. She's been active in the tech startup ecosystem for 15 plus years and has played a central leadership role in representation in the sector, having led a global organization of 60 plus chapters focused on women in entrepreneurship as its president. She's also an entrepreneur in residence at LaunchNY and a longtime mentor for Techstars. Kate has spoken at and been featured in hundreds of places, including South by Southwest, Web Summit, Collision Conference, Fast Company, Techcrunch, MSNBC, IBM, and Al Jazeera America. She has a BA from the University of Rochester and an MBA from Emory University and an MA from the Fletcher School at Tufts University. She's a very non-professional but adventurous athlete and musician, loves a good meal with bubbly, don't we all, craft beer and friends, and lives with her husband and startup web developer turned beer guy on a hop farm in Upstate New York with their two boys. So Kate, come on in and join us here. Welcome, welcome. Happy to have you here. And so for all of you that are here, maybe you're here for the first time. I am Robin Cohen. I'm the co-founder of UpLevel, and we do this micro-learning online experience every single Wednesday. And if you're new to Zoom, none of us are right now because of this year, but just remember to keep everything in the chat section so that we're engaging with each other, but do start leaving your questions in the Q&A section below. Kate, welcome, happy to have you here. So excited for this. Hope you had an awesome Thanksgiving, and I hope everyone else out there did too. Me too. So Kate, just to kind of like get things going and just to let the audience know, they're used to me by now saying like, I've known this person for, you know, so many years, but we have. I think we've probably known each other since about what, 2008, 2009, right around there. And we were both involved with that. Yep, I know. And we were both involved in that women's organization, which is where we met, which is awesome. And so Kate's going to talk about the power of your network. And so Kate, do you want to just maybe kick things off with the audience, just maybe a little intro into what they're going to learn, and then I'm going to give the stage over to you.
Yep. So I wanted to make this pretty practical. So I'm going to take a little bit, just a few short minutes to talk about kind of my own journey with thinking about my network and how it's played in my own space and in my own experience and where I am now. And then kind of the good nitty gritty stuff is I'm going to go through from my own experience, some of the ways that I have learned to nurture, grow, and sort of use my network, and really a framework for thinking about how that network, because it really has been a pretty central role into where I am now. So that's that.
Yep.
Shall I dive in?
Yeah, dive in. And I was just going to say, I know how much my network has helped me over the years. So I love this topic, and I know that the audience is going to get a lot out of it. So I am going to disappear in the background. I'm going to let you have the stage. But before that, make sure you can share your screen and, you know, get your presentation up there. I just want to make sure that's all working. We had a glitch last week, and so I'm like, hopefully technology is going to be kind to us this week.
I do actually have disabled participant screen sharing. I think you just have to enable it for me.
Yep. All right. Give it a whirl now.
Okay, I think this is what I want to do. What am I doing here? Hold on.
Okay.
It's asking me for system preferences. While I'm doing this, I will launch into, okay, I hate to say this, we should have gone through this. This is asking me to quit Zoom quickly and come back on.
Okay, what I'm wondering
for some reason, and I don't know why,
is can you share it at all, or do you have to update your preferences before you do?
It's asking me to update my preferences.
Okay. So, and you know, it's one of those things. So, hi audience, bear with us. It's one of those things. Zoom actually just updated their software recently. And so usually their platform is really seamless, that it just all magically happens. But if you also updated your Mac software, you kind of have to go into preferences and update a few things. So maybe what we should do, Kate, is if you want to send me the presentation, we did this with Robin Ward last week. I'm going to quickly email it to me.
You got it.
I will open it up on my end. And then what's going to happen is you'll, go ahead.
Robin, if I share it's a Google spreadsheet, I'll just share it with you. Good?
Perfect. Yep. And great. What will happen is because I have the controls, when you're just moving through the slides, just say next slide, next slide, next slide, and we'll roll on.
You got that.
Everyone, in the meantime, please share where you're tuning in from. Just to let you know, I can actually Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was going to say I can actually do the first portion of it too while you're getting it set up.
Yeah, let's do that. And so, Kate, do you want to tell people where you are based out of?
Yep. I'm currently in upstate New York, and real upstate New York, outside of Syracuse. As Robin mentioned, I live on a hops farm with my husband and my 2 boys. It's delightful. I have been working in some capacity remotely for, probably over 10 years at this point. So have a nice little spot nestled in here, and do consider New York City kind of our metro hub. So that's about that. And
hey,
Robin,
awesome.
That should be shared with you. Yeah, that should be shared with you. And if you'd like, the first little portion of it was really just my story. I can dive in there while you're getting that set up. We can kind of just go if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, so Jane Durkee, hello from Minneapolis. Everyone else, just, jot down in there in the chat where you're tuning in from. We'd love to, get a sense of, are you just tuning in from the US or Canada or any other parts of the world? So please share with us where you're tuning in from, and let me get going on your presentation, Kate.
Great. Okay, wonderful. While Miss Robin is popping that up, the first portion is that I wanted to share with you a little bit of my networking journey, and how I came to really place a pretty high value on my network. I started out in the tech industry, or the tech startup space, about 15 years ago, mainly as a practitioner. Was kind of like right in the center of this Cambridge innovation hub, right in Boston, which was just, I think, a really cool experience for me, because I was surrounded by a whole bunch of different startups. You're sort of classic, and this was way back when it was not cool to be going into startups out of college. So this was a very unique work environment. So you've got this whole hub, a bunch of different businesses, the literal water cooler and kitchen conversations. You've got innovation happening, you've got talks coming in, you've got community events and networking, all this stuff right around me, right at age 21. So I'm not going to pretend I was smart about that because I sort of just took it in, I participated in it, I created relationships, but I wasn't very conscious of that process. And that's not a bad thing, but I do think if one of the things that I do talk to people about is being very conscious kind of opportunities for networking and for building networks. And I'm going to go into that in just a second. So as I did my journey, I went through 2 master's degree programs. So, you know, again, sort of like doing this network expansion that sort of naturally comes with that. Stayed in the startup space, which is a very sort of scrappy, resourceful pulling of things, putting together. Robin and I, again, had interfaced doing this really great work with women around the world who were in technology and entrepreneurship. So again, sort of expansion of network and developing relationships and all that stuff. And the moment that I realized how important that was when I decided to move from Boston back to where I'm from, which is where I am now, Central New York. And I had originally come back for a particular job. I was actually going to take over the family business. That's another story. But that didn't last. Everything's good. Don't worry. I still talk to my family. And I decided from Syracuse, New York, that I was going to restart my consulting business, which was in essentially digital and social media at that time. The Syracuse market for that was, let's say, less developed than elsewhere. And so I very immediately kicked in to reignite the entire network that I had built prior to that. And it went like that. And that is literally when I said, my gosh, there is some power here. I'm going to do something with it. And then over the course of 9 or 10 years, I developed quite a few additional relationships, moved into the role of taking over Women 2.0, am now fundraising for a large VC fund, none of it local, all of it remote, and all of it, the power just really kicked in. So I had just a summary, I had this sort of like at least less conscious journey in my network, and then it became very conscious. And I spent some time really analyzing sort of what happened in there, what I did that I didn't realize I was doing, what I could have done better, all this stuff. And now I really try to talk to people a lot who ask for, you know, what are some things I can do to set myself up well for the future? One of them is the power of network. I really do find it quite valuable. I want to talk through a little bit for a few minutes about how I look at network. And you're going to see this sort of repeated as we go through a couple of the words of advice that I have for network. So the first thing is that network, to me, network is sometimes one of those words that's used that where it can seem very disingenuous and sort of salesy in that realm. Sometimes when people hear networking, it can have a negative connotation. To me, there are certain aspects about networking in order to do it right and in order to make it a completely genuine and really valuable process. So I'm going to sort of get into that as we go on. And Robin, if you'd like to go 2 slides up. Great. So a couple of the hows, which will also bring out a little bit of the philosophy that I have around networking. So first thing, specifically for women, a little bit of a stat is that 77% of the women who consider themselves to be successful in their own careers also cite that they have what you could call an inner circle. And what that inner circle is really a very small handful of close other women. And again, it doesn't have to be just women. This just happens to be this particular research. And by small, I really mean 2, 3, or 4 people. And if you start to think about it, it's almost like the go-tos. So when you're thinking about your network, who are the very close relationships you have, and they can be friends, they can be close colleagues, they can be, in some cases, they can be bosses. It's sort of just the people that you really feel ultimately comfortable with. You do the bulk of your discussing, mentorship, sponsorship, all the stuff. You consistently open doors for each other. You're consistently providing opportunities for each other, all of that stuff. So thinking about a network and thinking about that sort of like inner circle of people can be really powerful. Now, that doesn't mean that then once you extend that, you have an outer circle. It doesn't mean that's less powerful. It's actually having the two in combination that can be really, that can really kind of upstart things because they work in conjunction with each other. Additionally, what happens is that when you have an inner circle that's really strong, you're able, it's almost the network effect. You're able to actually benefit from the outer circles of your inner circle that aren't just yours. So the other 2 or 3 people who are in your circle, their network almost by extension becomes your outer circle network as well. So you can see how the two kind of really play well on top of each other. So think about that particular aspect when you do think about your network. And Robin, you can go to the next slide. Great. This is an obvious one, but this one was so important to me. And it's something that I think I sort of naturally did without really thinking about it, just because I really enjoy people. So, but I really enjoy, I enjoy people, but I'm also, nobody believes me when I say this, but I am actually a pretty strong introvert. And so what that means is I get a little deeper with a smaller number of people over having larger, over trying to sort of extend in terms of numbers. So surface level, superficial relationships, to some extent, if they're on the real outside of your network, those can be valuable, but they end up being valuable on sort of like a case by case, almost like an a la carte basis. They're not a consistent level of value. As an example, there might be one thing you can pull from one of those relationships, then it's kind of, you know, that's kind of it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but just sort of the quantity stuff really kind of goes on the outside. Where it starts getting long-term powerful is once you start getting in, you start getting a lot more quality, you've got slightly deeper relationships. It doesn't mean you have to know everything about a person. It just means there's some level of consistency to the relationship. We're going to get again into a couple things like give and take, that type of thing, that in my opinion goes into the quality piece of it. But you start getting the more long-term benefits when you get higher quality, smaller numbers of people. So closely related to your core circle, but almost see it as like concentric circles kind of going out that are linked to this idea of quality over quantity. What categorically does not work, and I'll say this is my opinion, but I think it's a pretty good opinion, is when you have a network that is made up of really just the kind of quantity superficial level relationships. That does not work. That's when you sort of get into that sales mode, when you think about the person who is just consistently going out and handing out business cards, that sort of cliche version of network. That is the one that, in my opinion, is not long-term sustainable, nor is it going to bring a lot of value. So quality over quantity. Robin, next slide. Great. Nurture and listen. This is a two-way street. If you position yourself within your network as your network benefiting you, and how can you get value out of your network, that is another scenario in which, in my opinion, you won't have very much long-term growth out of that network or long-term benefit. So establishing right up front that networking at the end of the day and your network is very much a two-way street. What that means is you really have to do some giving to your network, and you have to do some listening of your network. That means you're going to be turning around and opening your own doors for people. You know, you're going to be making sure that if someone needs some advice, even if it's just 20 minutes sometime, and maybe you're not, you know, pulling in and making an intro, you're just spending a little time and listening with them. It might mean that you make up an excuse to just have a little bit of a touch point in with somebody. One of the things that I like doing, it sort of comes naturally because my brain makes connections pretty easily, but it is a good actual networking or network tactic is to send something like an article or an interesting resource that you know might be really valuable to the person on the receiving end. That's a great small touch point that actually really positively adds to a relationship. The little touch points that you have along the way can be pretty powerful if you keep them up and you're consistent. Robin, next slide. Get personal. This is inspired by my dad. So when I say get personal, I do not necessarily mean here that you need to or should go into any relationship pouring out your personal life. One of the first things that I like to talk about when I talk about getting personal in this instance is to actually do a little bit of self-reflection and understand what your own boundaries are with people who are in a business network for you. And there's no right answer to that. It is completely based on your own comfort level. But I do encourage people to sit down and think about that first before they start diving into creating slightly more personal relationships. That being said, when I say get personal here, I really mean think strongly about the person that you are talking about, not just the business stuff that might be right in front of you. I always remember my dad. My dad was a business owner, but at the end of the day, really what he was an absolutely excellent, I don't even like using this term, salesperson. And I don't like using the term salesperson because what he really is he's the people person. And he is the type of person that remembered every small detail, kids going to college, wife taking, a cross-country trip, buying a new house, anything that would come up in a conversation. He didn't even have to write it down. And the next time they had a phone call, honestly, probably the first 10 minutes of the conversation would be all the personal stuff. And it wasn't deep. Nobody felt uncomfortable. It was a catch up. And that made him such an excellent salesperson. He was trustworthy. He played on people's emotions, and played is probably not the right word on there, but he, I guess, really touched people's emotions. That can have a huge impact on relationships. And he was showing people that he was genuine and he remembered details about them. The perception on the other side of the table there is that this person was listening, this person cares, I am important to this person, and I would consider them a valuable part of my network. And so when you think about getting personal, really think about it as, how am I relating to this human in front of me as a person and not as a business contact? This, I think, is a really powerful thing. I really kind of go into a lot of my conversations, whether it's the first time conversation with a big tech exec or whether it's someone like Robin. I go into conversations with my guard down, for the most part, strategically, with a desire, a real curiosity and desire to learn about the person, and a little bit of a goal to spend at least a couple minutes not talking business, and talking about whatever. So this, I think, has been a really powerful thing for me for long-term maintenance of relationships. It also really helps short-term in relationships because it provides warmth. So even if it's going to be a 1 or 2 time conversation because you're getting to the goal of maybe closing a client or something like that, this tactic can be really good because it just sort of breaks down walls, creates warmth around the conversation, makes everybody feel people to people instead of, hey, we're tackling something on the business side. Great. Robin, next question. This is a big one. Find the win-win. This can come out in 2 ways. If you have a relationship with somebody and thinking about a win-win can be fairly obvious on a one-time basis. So if you go into something and let's say you need something from a person in your network, if you were to think about, okay, I am asking this person for something that will benefit me and what I am trying to do, and you think about the scenario you're trying to get done and whether or not there is actually a spot in there for the person that you're requesting of to actually also benefit from that. So it might be that you need an intro to a sponsor so that you can run a conference, as an example. Maybe what you do too is in that intro request, you say, and by the way, I'd love to have you speak or moderate a panel. Something as simple as that, where in that actual scenario, it's an immediate win-win situation. And then everybody is moving forward because great on both sides of the table. The other way this can happen too is kind of a little bit longer term, is having a little bit of a consciousness about the give and takes between your individual relationships. So where you might have a win here on that request, being a little bit more active on trying to make sure that maybe sometime in the next 6 months, you can pass over a win to the very same contact. And so just making sure, and it's not about keeping score. In fact, this is really sort of for you to keep yourself accountable for doing the giving side of that networking component. So finding the win-win, whether it's short-term, one time, or whether it's long-term, is definitely going to be important. Robin, next slide. This is great. when you are in any networking scenario, making sure that you're really leaning in with confidence on your own level of expertise and experience. Sometimes when people go into networking scenarios or situations, oftentimes it can feel like you're looking upwards, whether that's inside a company, whether again it's sort of out in the business ecosystem where you might live, whatever it may be. Generally speaking, when people are growing their network, they're either looking parallel or up from a growth perspective and from a contact perspective. That can easily put people in a situation where they either have a perceived or a true lack of confidence in their own expertise and experience. I have suffered from this myself before, and I know it's a very sort of common scenario for people when they are out there trying to build relationships. And I have found that over time, when I was able to really sort of own what I know, I own what I do, I own how I can contribute to that relationship or that situation. When I can own that, I actually become a much better networker, because at that point, I know that everything we just talked about, win-wins can happen. I know that I'm bringing a whole bunch of stuff behind me that makes me more confident creating relationships with people. So the more self-worth you can give yourself and your experience and your expertise, I think is very important for your own, I don't want to say abilities, but for your own kind of drive and set of actions for when you're going in and doing some networking. Robin, next slide. Great. Networking can be closely related to the idea of mentorship and sponsorship. When you're networking, and especially when you're kind of looking at quality over quantity, there are things that you're searching for when you're networking. So a subset of that can be found in the realm of either advice or opportunity. And so I want to talk about this idea of mentorship versus sponsorship. Again, this could be an entire session in and of itself. But mentorship, generally speaking, most especially mentorship, are very loaded. And so when we talk about mentorship, what we're talking about is usually a one-to-one relationship where the core of the relationship is really around advice and support. Sponsorship is that mentorship wrapped with turning around and having the sponsor actually open doors for someone else. I like to talk about the idea of micro mentorship and micro sponsorship. And both of these things have to do with networking. And again, it can be either you're giving that or you're getting that. And so if you think about networking, which is normally a little bit more one-off than sort of a long-term mentorship relationship, you think about mentorship as strip away the relationship part of it as an input into your process or your mindset that allows you to advance in some way, shape, or form, either what you're doing in your business, how you are as a leader, or what have you. It allows you, again, to sort of do some self-learning on that. So if you literally think of it as input in for improvement of self, and then you think about sponsorship as input in for improvement of self with an added open door or opportunity attached to that, you can then start to think about a lot of the ways where you can get actual micro mentorship and micro sponsorship going when you're thinking about your network. So this could come in terms of like, hey, I have this specific business problem. I'd love to take 15 minutes of your time, person in network, in order to get that micro mentorship piece. And again, that's a really amazing thing to be able to offer, a really amazing and easy thing to be able to offer in that give and take relationship to the rest of your network. So yes, I actually know about that, and I'm willing to give you 15 minutes so that we can go through whatever it is. Client contracts, do's and don'ts, whatever it may be. So if you can think about the power of mentorship and sponsorship as concepts, and then when you're thinking about your network, this idea of micro mentorship and micro sponsorship, that can be a really great recipe for, again, getting deeper level relationships and creating longer term relationships that involve give and takes, which again, in my opinion, is kind of the core and most valuable place that you can be in terms of building a network. Robin, you can go to the next slide, although I believe that it is our closing slide. And really just wanted to close with saying that networks really can be powerful and long-term powerful if you are able to think about them and almost put a management lens around your network, and understanding a couple of the things that you can keep sort of injecting in, taking out, all of that stuff in order to really create a little bit of a network engine. That is where you'll find a real true level of value that will advance you not only in business terms, but also in personal terms as well. So with that, I will close.
Awesome. Let me just stop sharing the screen. Okay, awesome. Well, I have to tell you, I know the power of network. I wouldn't have been able to start Uplevel, and just let you know, my dog's in the background in case anyone is wondering. But yeah, I actually wouldn't have been able to get a lot of jobs, you know, to leverage, you know, what we did with the women's organization, like to start that in Los Angeles and grow it. That was because of my network. Even when I started like a similar platform in Brazil, same thing, leverage my network. It's always been about the network. And so we do have one question in the Q&A, but I'd like for the rest of the audience to not be shy and to add more questions to the Q&A. I'm going to kick things off because I have a couple of questions just to kind of like, you know, warm things up and get us talking about it. So Kate, I'd like to ask, what has been the most significant thing that's happened because of your network for you, your career, or, you know, any initiative that you've worked on? Yeah, I'm gonna two spots on that. Where my network kind of came together for me, where, you know, things started to make sense and these relationships started to kind of like go in this direction, was when I was able to take over Women 2.0
4 years ago. Again, you know, you and I had been doing this work for years and years prior to that, but it was always sort of on the side. And then there was some startup stuff. And so it was like a little bit of a mix. And then all of a sudden it just came together, and I was able to pull all of this network in and kind of then inject it into, because most of it at that point kind of made sense, right? And a part of that too, one caveat, a part of that too is that it was also the convergence of two pieces of my career. So, but I really was able to at that point say, okay, this makes sense. A lot of these disparate parts that I've been sort of working on now actually have slots, so to speak. So little things like building my advisory board, you know, reaching out to potential partners, making sure we had interviews for media spots, like the whole bit. All of a sudden it was like, boom, okay. The second one is when we started fundraising for our VC fund earlier this year. So many people in my network who had supported me, or we had some interaction around the work, the community level work I'd been doing for women and underrepresented founders, that immediately switched over into actual investments into our fund. And so that for me was like a very clear, they had trusted me, they had supported they had seen what I had already done, even though it was not making investments at all. And they said, yep, this makes sense for me. The relationship was there, and they opened up their wallets. And that was awesome. Obviously, for obvious reasons, but also like truly just like remarkable.
Yeah, no, definitely. So the one question that we did have was actually from Mason. She was wondering if, you know, we're going to have a recording of this, just to let everyone know that all up-level sessions are recorded. And then usually within about 5 to 7 days after the webinar, it will be on our website. So you can actually access it at any time, which is great. And so other than that, again, everyone feel free to, you know, drop in a question with Kate, you know, any question at all, like, you know, advice on leveraging your network for your career, for the job search, for starting a business, anything along those lines. Okay, so I'm going to ask you another question while we wait. Can you give the audience an example of how you feel it's best to leverage your network for the job search? For the job search, okay. So a couple of things is the very first thing is knowing who's where. That's a sort of a key thing. But you know, we kind of have LinkedIn for that. True.
And so that makes it, and that's great. It's a great tool for that, to understand who is where, and not just where in terms of their company, but in terms of sector as well. So if you're a product manager and you're looking for a new role, who do you know who is in or around product, who may be a valuable resource? And then I always, from there, once I know the who's and the where's and that type of thing, it's kind of like your research, your research stage. I then think about warmth level, and I think about all the couple of things that I mentioned in my talk, which is, you know, how has the give and take been of our relationship? How deep is our relationship? When I've interacted with this person, how open have they been or willing to open doors? So I sort of go, and you know, at this point, it's a little bit of a gut thing. At this point, you kind of know, but if you're not sure, doing that little checklist of what is the status of this relationship, and then being very genuine when you ask people out. So one of the things that I think is important when you ask, I shouldn't say that. One of the things that I prefer when I am getting a request into me is I prefer that they are transparent and concise. And so the concise is easy. Like, I don't need 4 paragraphs on kind of your journey. I'm being a little blunt here, but I don't need 4 paragraphs on your journey. You know, I want to skim, I want to know what you want, right? And then the second thing is transparency. And in an ideal world, you get an email request that really basically asks exactly what you want. I am looking for a job. I'm wondering if you can help me, or if you have a contact at this company, or whatever it is. It may be that it's not so direct, but I have had several requests where I have gotten on the phone thinking that it's one thing that was sort of stated, and it becomes another thing. And I'm going to tell you that that is the first, that is a no. I may not tell you no, but that is nope, you are done. So, and again, I'm being blunt, but that is absolute reality. So transparency is really key. Again, it doesn't mean you have to spill everything, but don't try to do the thing where you're getting them on the phone just to get them on the phone and that type of thing. Be really respectful of time. And then from there, that is a little bit where that idea of owning your expertise really does kick in. Whenever you're in request mode, making sure that confidence is there. So if you're going in and asking for a job, or you're reaching out to a contact to say, hey, listen, I'm looking for a new job. I don't know if you know anybody, but I've had a great level of experience. I'm really interested to know if there's anybody you can talk to. Try to lay out a couple of very clear options for them, especially if it's not a direct ask. If it's not like, you're at this company, can you introduce me to the HR manager? That's clear, right? If it's someone who might be a connector, just say, hey, listen, do you know, I'm interested in this company. Do you know anybody there? Is there somebody that you know in this sector that I could talk to? You know, kind of because one of the things that's kind of hard from a requester, and I have a problem with this, is I'm not good at high level requests, because then I get my whole Rolodex goes like this, and I can't. So when I have founders reach out to me asking me if I know anybody who will invest in their company or who might be interested, my brain knows that there are literally probably 20 people that I could, but I can't. So then I turn around and I say, do you have an investor target list? I will work off of that. So it's little things like that, like just be super clear, very action oriented, so that there's not a ton of thinking for them. And then make things easy. If they say yes, write out a forwardable email to them so that they have very little action on their part. So those are kind of some of the things I think about in that world. Is just making it really easy from a requester standpoint and be very clear.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm just going to keep the Q&A going. I apparently have a lot of questions. You know, I think people are just wanting to just tune into our little fireside chat here. So I guess my last question would be so here we are in a pandemic, right? Our world has gone virtual. The opportunities that we have to go to events, right, and to network in that way have been completely wiped out or greatly altered or canceled, you know, whatever that looks like. So how can you effectively continue to build your network during this hyper virtual world that we're in right now?
Yeah, I love this question. So yes, networking looks very different right now. But I think with it has brought some really neat opportunities. So number one, there are a ton of things that you can now actually engage in your living room. I mean, that's from, like, with a glass of wine if you want to, you know. I mean, it's really kind of cool. And so some of the things I think about is there are a lot of opportunities I always encourage people to look for events that also have that networking component to them. So some of the formats I've seen are, again, maybe a little bit of a fireside chat, and then maybe people go into breakouts or something. I've taken part in a couple of those, and you, I mean, it's great. Then you're connecting on LinkedIn, and they're in your network at that point, you know. I have we're doing an accelerator program, and actually I should talk to you about this. An accelerator program for women of color in the spring. I met the guy, I was speaking. I met the guy in a breakout session, and now we're partnering and we're doing this whole accelerator program. It's fantastic. So amazing. I think people are a lot more, it's really opened the door for people who didn't normally think you could network online. They were forced into it, and now they're doing it. So it's like it's a really warm environment for that. Another tactic that I've sometimes done is I'll go to, I will join an event like this, or you name it, sort of an online event. And as I'm sort of engaging in that sort of thing, I just check out who's in the attendee list or the speaker list or anything like that. I actually will then use that as a direct excuse to reach out on LinkedIn the next day. Don't need to do anything on event, but that is much different than if you and I were at a conference and we passed each other in the hall. We wouldn't even know to connect, let alone it would be creepy if I said, Robin, I passed you in the hallway. I would love to connect, you know? It's that is actually a really great thing that you can do. Say, hey, I heard you speak yesterday, or hey, I noticed you were there. I didn't get to connect, but you have a great profile. Want to hop on the phone for 30 minutes? And then there are a couple of the kind of, I guess, more fun, I don't know if they're considered fun, but like happy hours and that type of thing. One of the things we're going to do next, our organization is going to do next year, is we're just going to do monthly happy hours. It's same thing, just come have a glass of wine with us. We're actually going to try to feature some women and underrepresented owned beverage owners, and just get that going, because everyone loves those breakout sessions. And then the last thing I would say is that a lot of these conferences that are online now that are usually free for people, they've really done a good job, some of these platforms, at having networking built around it. They'll have meeting schedules, lounges. So if you're seeing an online event, even if you might not be like entirely interested in the speaker lineup, if it's free, join in, because they might just turbo boost your networking alone, and that might be valuable enough. So that's another thing I've definitely noticed on some of these great conference websites.
Yeah. And I also want to just throw in there as well is, I'm not sure if you are familiar with Clubhouse, Kate, the new app.
Yep.
So that has been fascinating to watch. Now, everyone, it's invite only right now.
which I actually think is a smart way to grow the app. So if you happen to know a friend that's on Clubhouse and they have, you know, an invite that they can give out, take the invite. I actually think it is a wonderful new way to connect with people right now, especially with what we're going through with the pandemic. I've already met like a handful of people on there just from, you know, being involved with the different rooms and the conversations that are happening. But I will say, you know, rather than thinking that LinkedIn is our only way, or, you know, some of these virtual events, Clubhouse is quickly becoming a new and exciting way to connect with people right now. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Before we completely wrap up, so we want to talk a little bit, you know, about the giveaway. And so everyone knows that the giveaway today is if your business or the company that you work for, you know, that you are looking for another platform to get your job postings out there. Kate and Women 2.0 have been really generous to give you a free job posting on their board, and they reach thousands upon thousands of people. And honestly, it's also a great way to introduce your company to an entirely new network of people and contacts. And so I know that we didn't have a lot of like Q&A, but we did have a couple of people in the chat area. So I'm going to quickly choose a couple of people from the chat area. So Jane and Mesa, if you're still here with us, Jane or Mesa, if you're still here with us, if you could just put in the chat like, hey, I'm still here, or you're not, or just let us know. We'd love for you to win the giveaway. Okay, so Jane is still here. Woohoo! Let's see if, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, if it's Mesa or Mesa. Oh, good, they're still here. So let me put in my email quickly. So Jane and Mesa, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Please shoot me an email. So take down my email right now before we close out the session. Shoot me an email and we'll connect and we'll work on the details of the giveaway. Kate, this has been awesome. I think it's a really important topic of conversation right now, because I think that, you know, networking is, you know, a lot of it is about human connection, which we're not having a lot of right now, you know. And I think knowing, you know, what's important about building your network or leveraging your current network and how to do that right now is, I think, really, really valuable. So thank you so much for that and for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was amazing to see you too, Robin.
Yes, same here. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Remember, we will be back here next week with our next Up Level Live session. Wishing you an awesome afternoon. Take care, Kate. We will be in touch. Take care, everyone. Thanks for your time. Bye now.